Hello guys and welcome back to my booktube channel. My name is Talia and welcome back to I Read a Little, and this is going to be my March wrap up. Sorry if the lighting's a bit weird. I've had to close my curtains because next door have got some like window cleaners outside doing something, and it's a bit awkward. Like they can see in my window and they can see me like recording, and I'm a bit like, I don't want you to be able to see me recording here being really awkward. So I've had to like shut my curtains. They probably think I'm being like really weird, like why has she shut her curtains? So yeah, I read 8 books this month. So that's quite good for me considering it was like end of time at uni and I had like a lot of work due in. That's actually not too bad for me to be able to read that many books. I'm pleased with that. We're going to take it. So yeah, we're going to get right into it. I think I'll do it by rating, so I'll do the lowest rated book first and then I'll go up to highest rated. So we'll just get into it because it's going to take ages otherwise. So the first book that I read I'll put up here because I don't have a physical copy of it, and that was Lost Boy by Christina Henry, and that was one of the picks I took from my TBR jar. I gave it 2 stars. I really didn't enjoy it. So it was basically a retelling of Peter Pan, and it just was written very childishly. Like, I don't know, I didn't really enjoy it. It was very like savage and childish. Like, it seemed like young boys trying to play at like an adult's game, and it didn't come across very well, and I just did not enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it at all. Like, I don't know, it was very rushed. The book itself is not very long at all. Maybe that's like part of the flaw of like why it felt rushed. They could have gotten you attached to like some of the characters a bit more, but it was a bit like, what's that really famous Lord of the Flies? It really reminded me of like Lord of the Flies, but they just stuck Peter Pan in there, and I just don't think that really works. Like, I don't know, it's kind of like, I'm just going to take Lord of the Flies and turn it into like Peter Pan, and I really didn't enjoy it. It was really rushed, and I felt like there was a, it's not really a spoiler for me to say, there was a quick turnover of characters, so a lot of characters were killed off, and this was before you'd really become attached to any of the characters, so I kind of think, what's the point of that? You're like not invested in what you're reading and they're killing off people, and it's like, that's not enjoyable for you. You don't feel that like emotional roller coaster of, oh my god, you killed off my favourite character. So yeah, I didn't enjoy it at all. I think my mum's home. She might come upstairs in a minute, we'll see. Anyway, yeah, I just didn't enjoy it at all. I thought like it was just childish. I didn't like the way it's hard for me to like explain it without somebody having also read it, but it seemed very childish to me, and I did not enjoy it, hence 2 stars for that one. The next book that I read was The Secret Diary of Henrik Groen, 83 1/4 years old, by Henrik Groen, I think is the actual author of this book, and it basically documents, it's a kind of a memoir, expose it's called in the inside of the page, of a year of his life inside a care home in Amsterdam. So yeah, I was quite interested to read this primarily because of knowing about different laws and regulations of like looking after people in care homes in different countries, and to see if it's different from the way that we do it in the United Kingdom. I always hear about how in like the Netherlands and stuff, their laws are way more ecologically friendly and things like that, and I always think, oh god, I'd like much rather prefer to live there, and apparently a lot of the people are happier and they just have more like fulfilling lives throughout their like life cycle. So I was quite interested to know whether it was similar kind of like rules and regulations as in the UK, and he actually does, within his expose, he does touch upon topics of politics and regulations of care homes in that country, so that was quite interesting, but he only briefly touched upon this. I gave this book in the end 3.5 stars because I enjoyed the book as a whole, and I enjoy stories from elderly people and like just listening about the sorts of things they get up to. However, I did find that as equally as I enjoyed this book, there were parts of it that I didn't really find that interesting. Like certain parts of his diary entries I thought were boring, and I found myself kind of like skimming past them, and it took me forever to read this book. Normally a book only takes me like 1 to 2 days. This book took me like 5 days to read, and the writing isn't even that small, and it's in like days. It's in like a diary entry format, so you wouldn't have thought. Are you going to focus on my face, dude? I think that's as good as we're going to get. You wouldn't have thought that it would have taken that long to read this, but it did. And I don't know if that's just because I wasn't enjoying it as much. Maybe that's a telltale sign that like it wasn't as enjoyable. So that's kind of why I gave it 3.5 stars. I wanted to enjoy it, and the idea itself, I enjoyed. And he ends up making a... I don't think it's really a spoiler because I think it's on the inside page, but they end up making like a little club, a little like old person's club, where they go out and do, like, they have adventures, so that they don't like basically sit away inside their care home rotting. And I think that's a really nice idea. If it is a true story, which I think it might be, then that's, you know, that's nice to know. Quite often you read these like exposés of elderly people who go off on adventures and they're completely fictitious, so it's quite nice that like this actually does happen, and for that reason I did enjoy that. But certain parts of the book he was just talking about random shit that like I didn't find interesting at all, and maybe that's just a generational thing, but I gave it 3.5 because I liked the premise of it and I liked the majority of the writing. The next book that I read, that I will put up here because I don't have a physical copy of it, was Young Jane Young by Gabrielle Zevin. Again, I rated this one 3.5 stars. I'm a huge fan of Gabrielle Zevin. Nearly every one of her books that I've read, I really enjoyed, like 4 or 5 stars. I found them to be like quite inspirational and groundbreaking actually. Whenever I read them I always took something away from them that was quite phenomenal. I didn't with this one, and I didn't enjoy it as much. I don't know why. Again, I've read a lot of character chapter perspectives where like each chapter is set on a particular character, and I think I've mentioned this before, if I don't find a particular character very interesting, I really struggle to engage with the book as much. I remember that with Lord of the Rings. I think Lord of the Rings is split up into characters, although it's not labelled as such. Each chapter follows different, obviously, groups, because you're following like Frodo and Sam and Merry and Pippin, and I always found myself like skipping Frodo and Sam's chapters and wanting to go back to Merry and Pippin because it was way more fun. And I found that here as well, that I just didn't, I don't know, I wasn't attached to as many of the characters. There's my cat. What are you doing? What are you doing? Oh, hello. What are you doing, Puppet? Oh, you're soaking wet. Oh, lamb chop. Yeah, I didn't find myself as attached to the characters as I did in her previous books. So basically it follows the story of, I think she's called Jane Young or something, and I don't want to say too much because it will like obviously spoil the story, but it just follows her life, assuming a new identity, and it tells it from the perspectives of like her mother and her daughter and her, and I can't really say more than that, to be honest, because I don't want to spoil it. But yeah, I just didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it as much as her other books. I don't know if maybe this one's adult and her other books were more young adult, although the Varied Life of AJ Furkey, whatever it's called, was adult, and I really enjoyed that. So I don't know what it was. I mean, it's just like, I feel like at some point if you really like an author, there's going to be a time where you don't like one of her books, and unfortunately I think that was the case with this one. I did enjoy the idea of the book as a whole, and I enjoyed some of the characters' perspectives, but there were some that I didn't enjoy as much, and I just kind of thought, where's this book going? I don't know. It was alright. To be honest, I read it so long ago I can't remember some parts of it, but yeah, 3.5 stars for that one. The next book that I read was We Are All Completely Beside Ourselves by Karen Joy Fowler, I think it is. And again, I gave this one 3.5 stars. So it tells the story of Rosemary from the point at which she's at university, I think, or she's at college, and it tells the story of parts of her life like throughout her life cycle, like it goes back in time, and I don't really want to, there's like a particular, she had a sister Fern who vanished, and then her brother vanishes, and it's about how she was used as a childhood experiment, but I don't want to elaborate on that because there's quite a big like spoiler in it that I don't really want to tell you guys. You find out like a little way through the book. So I enjoyed this book, although I will say it deals a lot with I don't think it's a spoiler to say that it deals a lot with like animal activism and things like that when she's in her college years and she's reflecting on her life, and it talks a lot about animal rights and things like that, but like I would have enjoyed if it spoke about that more, and it didn't really. It more talked about Rosemary and her life and her relationship with her parents and her siblings, and kind of like why she's like the way she is as a result of what happened to her during her childhood. And I was just kind of like, why do we want to know? Like, I don't give a shit. Like, why do I care what happened to Rosemary when she was a kid? Like, she just kind of annoyed me, and I didn't really care. Like, I didn't care about it. I cared more about the involvement with the politics than I did about her whining about her life and like what happened to her and what was kept secret from her and like shit like that. Like, I just didn't really care. I didn't care for her at all, to be honest. I was just like, fucking like suck it up and get on with it. So so it made me not enjoy the book as much, and I feel like it could have gone down a different route and I would have enjoyed it more, but that was obviously not what the author was going for. Like, you know, that's not the story she wanted to tell. Fair enough, like it's really well written and I can see why some people would like it. Like, it is well written, but it just wasn't for me. So 3.5 stars. The next books that I'm going to be talking about are my 4-star ones, and the first one I want to talk about is the one I'm most excited to talk about because I did it as part of a buddy-a-thon with Natasha. I'll put her channel down below. Her channel is My Reading is Odd, and I really enjoyed this. It was so fun. I've never done a buddy-a-thon, so it was my first like read along with other people where I was like, because my channel's new, it was my first opportunity to like follow other people on Twitter, and I really enjoyed it. Like, before I went to bed each night, I'd like go on Twitter and see like how other people had progressed and like leave a little comment and like encourage them along, and like I really enjoyed, like it really was my introduction to the whole like booktube community, and it was a really good experience. I enjoyed it so much, and I read The Stand by Stephen King, and it's so fucking big, and I really enjoyed like putting my little, I've taken them out now, but I enjoyed putting my little post-its in of like what I needed to read each day, and I felt like such a sense of accomplishment when I finished like my section. Towards the end I did end up reading like that much in one day because I was kind of like, I wanted to finish it. And this is my first Stephen King book. I've never read Stephen King before. I remember being recommended The Stand. Somebody told me, one of my friends I went to university with, his favourite author was Stephen King, or he loved Stephen King, and I was always recommended The Stand if I wanted to get into Stephen King, even though it's like a mammoth book. Apparently it's one of his best. So when I heard that it was being done for a buddy-a-thon, I was like, yes, I'm going to read this. And I did read it. I rated it 4 stars. I thought it was really good. And as an introduction to Stephen King, it was quite mind-blowing really, because like, I'm not ashamed to say that I was one of those people that thought like Stephen King did horror and like didn't really cover any other topics, but that was just my like ignorance really. And it was nice to realise that he does do more supernatural stuff, which I love. So it was really eye-opening for me, and this is the sort of book that I wish I'd read like 10 years ago, because this covers the sort of thing that I enjoy reading, apart from the religious stuff, which I will get into. As you can see, the book is fucking long. It probably didn't need to be this long, and I almost felt like, I don't know, so the storyline is that it is a dystopian novel where a plague or like some virus has like wiped out most of humankind, and the start of the book is so good. Like, it follows different characters' perspectives, and I kind of like, with Stephen King, like, there's probably, I don't count this as a spoiler, but I find that most dystopian plague novels the actual spreading of the plague itself is quite quick, and you don't really like, it doesn't cover like how it slowly progresses from people to people and everyone's just suddenly wiped out. Whereas with Stephen King, he really loves like attention to detail with character development, and I really enjoyed that. Like, it was so refreshing to read a book where he really goes in depth with each character, and he really makes you like love them or hate them. Like, he's so good at creating an in-depth character that you feel attached to, and I find like lately the books that I've been reading, that's been really lacking. So it was really refreshing to read a book where I felt either instantaneously like attached to people or like fucking hated them. It was like Marmite in that sense. Where was I going with this? Yeah, the plague. So he slowly shows how this plague spreads throughout mankind essentially, and it's a very slow burning journey. It doesn't just like wipe everybody out and then you're looking at what happens as a repercussion of this. He does the whole thing. Like, he's like slowly explaining how this plague kills everybody, and I love that. Like, I don't see that in a book, and I really enjoyed it. The aspect of the book I didn't enjoy was the more supernatural part of it, which I'm not going to go into too much detail about because I think it is a spoiler, but religion is involved quite heavily in the latter part of this book, where they're, during the points where they're starting to build like a community, it becomes more of a war on supernatural religion type things, and I really didn't enjoy that. I liked the latter part of the story with regards to how the characters interacted and the little relationships they all formed. I didn't like what it was all revolved around, the whole like religious side of it. I just didn't really enjoy it, and that took up like quite a large part of the end of the book, and it ruined it for me a little bit. I still gave it 4 stars because it was one of those like every day I looked forward to reading a chapter, so I obviously really enjoyed the book, but for that reason I didn't give it 5 stars. And there was a particular character in the book that I couldn't fucking stand, and his character chapters, that it's always a character chapter and they're quite long, so if you really don't like one of the characters, again, I've already said this previously, it fucking ruins it for you. And there was this one character in the book, comment below if you know who I'm talking about, and I couldn't stand him, and I was just like, the chapters with him in it were so long, and he wasn't even interacting with other people, so you're just literally watching him walking around, like watching him, reading him walking around doing stuff that you don't fucking give a shit about. So yeah, I could not wait. I found myself skimming those chapters, and I feel like that ruined it a little bit for me. I was like, why is this character, like, I don't like this character. Like, there was a character in the book that I really despised, but I enjoyed reading his part. This other character, I fucking hated his whole creation. I was just like, he shouldn't be in this book, I can't stand him, get rid of him, why are we wasting precious pages talking about this fucking idiot. I really want to read some more Stephen King now. I'm not really sure where to start. I'm not a fan of horror, so maybe like more of his supernatural stuff. I'll have to research like what good supernatural books he's written that I could read. I tried Gunslinger and I didn't like it, so yeah, 4 stars for that one though. Okay, so the next book that I rated 4 stars was How to Stop Time by Matt Haig, and I really enjoyed this book. I can't remember exactly why I didn't give it 5 stars. I think maybe I found it dragged on a little bit in certain parts. Oh yeah, I remember why. So this book is about a guy who's got a weird condition where he ages differently to everybody else. So he's actually like centuries of years old. He's been alive since like Elizabethan England, basically. So he's still like 41 in like present time, but he's been alive for like years and years and years, basically. And it basically follows his life in the present time, but also skims back to show his perspective from like other periods of his life and like what he got up to. He changes his identity. He's basically part of a group where like they change their identity every like 7 years or so that like people don't notice that they're like not aging. And the rule is that like you're not allowed to, it says this on the back so it's not a spoiler, you're not allowed to fall in love. So he obviously like falls in love in the book. So yeah, it's really good. I really enjoyed it. The only reason I rated it not 5 stars is there were parts of, like, obviously it travels through different time perspectives, and there were certain time perspectives where I didn't enjoy it and I was kind of like, oh, this is a bit boring. Otherwise I would have given it 5 stars. In order for me to give a book 5 stars, I would have had to have enjoyed every part of it, and I would have had to, like, have not stopped reading it, and I would have wanted to come home every day and read it. It wasn't the case with this one. But I really enjoyed it, that's why I gave it 4 stars. And I am now a massive convert of Matt Haig. I read his book Reasons to Stay Alive, which is a non-fiction book about his struggles with depression. Really enjoyed that book. It was really groundbreaking for somebody like who has had a history of like struggling with depression. It's quite good to read. It's also a really good book for people who have relations who have depression, if they want to try and understand it more. So yeah, I knew he'd written fiction books, hadn't picked one up, really wanted to read one, and I found this one amazing. Like, I really want to read all of his books, and I'm actually reading at the moment The Dead Fathers Club, which is one of his other books, and I read in April, at the beginning of April, which will be in my April wrap-up, The Humans, which is one of his other books. So yeah, I'm just gone on like a Matt Haig binge, basically. But yeah, I would recommend reading this book, 4 stars, it was really good. And if you like books that that cover different time periods, it's probably something that you would enjoy. And there wasn't a character in the book that I particularly disliked. So yeah, would recommend. Okay, so the other 4-star book that I read was Paperweight by, who wrote it? Just seeing who wrote it. Paperweight by Meg Haston, I think that's how you say it. It's basically a YA book following the story of a young girl whose name I can't remember. Stevie, there we go. I'm sorry, I have a really bad memory, so if I read a book at like the beginning of March and now it's like the 10th of April, I can't remember anything about the book, it's really bad. Anyway, Paperweight, YA book, follows the story of a young girl named Stevie who is sent to a rehabilitation clinic because she has anorexia, essentially. I think that's why. So yeah, it's a really well written story. I gave it 4 stars because I feel like the author really knew her stuff, like she researched it and she covered the topic really well in a sensitive way as well. So obviously you see a lot of other people's stories because it is in a rehabilitation clinic, so you see like the perspectives of like different people struggling with the illness. And the character is very believable, like it's told in a really good way, and she has a lot of other problems going on in her life that she hasn't dealt with. So it covers the story of like her and her relationship with her counsellor, and how these topics are broached and dealt with, basically. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. The only reason I didn't give it 5 stars was because I personally didn't emotionally connect with the character, although I felt like her story was believable and I really liked the way they covered such a sensitive topic. I didn't attach myself to the character. Maybe I'm just really horrible. I don't seem to like attach to any characters in books, but like I didn't feel, I don't know, like when they covered the stuff like the traumatic stuff that had happened to her, like it didn't touch me on an emotional level as much as I thought it would have, and that's probably why I rated it a bit lower. I gave it 4 stars because I thought it was really well covered. If you know you want to read a book about eating disorders that's really approached in a sensitive and well told, well written way, I would really recommend that book. But it didn't really hit me on an emotional level as much as I thought it would, but I still really enjoyed it. Okay, we saved the best till last. So I only read 1 5-star book in the month of March, and it was amazing, and I can't believe I haven't read it before, and that is Homegoing by, I don't know how you say it, I think it's Yargizai, or yeah, I think it's Yargizai, we're gonna go with that. I loved this book, I thought it was amazing. I almost want to keep it. I'm not keeping physical copies of books at the moment because I don't really have storage room for them. Sorry if you can hear my cat meowing, guys. He wants to come in my room. Yeah, really love this book. So it tells the story of Effie and Essie, two sisters who go down very different paths, and then it also tells stories from the different generations of I think like the children they have, and it goes down like at the beginning of the book there's a family tree, and it goes down like the family tree, and each each chapter is dedicated to following the lives of the different generations, but obviously they've both gone off in two different very directions. So one of the girls become a slave trader's wife, and one of them is sold into slavery. So it then follows the lives of their generations and what happens to all of them. And there's a lot more to it than that. It's not just, doesn't just cover that, but I don't want to spoil it. But it's so well told, and it's so enjoyable, and you're so attached to the characters, and I really resonated with me. And this is what like I expected all the other books to do that I didn't rate as highly. And again, it is a character chapter perspective, but I did not find that I didn't enjoy any of the characters' perspectives. Like every one of them I felt had something to offer that interested me, which is why I rated it 5 stars. And it was one of those books that like I did not want to put down. I would have quite happily sat there reading it until I finished it in one sitting. Yeah, I don't really know what more there is to say about it, to be honest. It just, I don't know, it's got such depth, and it just like, I loved it. Like I absolutely loved this book. Like I'm so happy I finally read it. And this was in my blind date with a book that I got from Waterstones. So I went into Waterstones, picked up 2 blind date with books. One of them was The Girls, which I think I rated 3.5 stars in my last wrap-up video, and one of them was this one, which I rated 5 stars. So I got very lucky with my blind date with a book because I got this little gem. So yeah, that covers all of the books that I read in March. I think that was 8 books. Yeah, I think that was 8 books. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I think I've already put up my April TBR. I was meant to be doing April-a-thon this week, and it just went to shit, and I only read 3 books out of like 6 books I was meant to read, and it was a fucking disaster. And I'm at the moment in a massive reading slump. Like I just can't get into any books. It's a disaster. So yeah, I don't know how good the April wrap-up's gonna be, to be honest, because I really like every book I pick up I'm just like, I don't want to read this. So yeah. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Be sure to let me know if you read any of these books and what you thought of them. I'm really interested if like you agreed with me, or if you didn't agree. Let me know why, because I like having those, like, I don't know, I'm not afraid of people to tell me like, I don't agree with you, I really like that book, because then you can get like different perspectives on it. I think that's like good, you know. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in my next